Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Chatham Select Board meeting of November 29th, 2022. Let the record show that the meeting started promptly at 5:30 p.m. I'll read what I'm supposed to read pursuant to Governor Baker's July 16th, 2022 signing of an act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, including the extension of his March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 20, until March 31st, 2023, this meeting of the Chatham Select Board is being conducted via in-person and remote participation. Every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in the order. A reminder that persons who would like to listen to this meeting while in progress may do so by calling the phone number 1-508-945-4410, conference ID 203-386-491#, or join the meeting online via Microsoft Teams through the link in the posted agenda. While this is a live broadcast and simulcast on Channel 18, despite our best efforts, we may not be able to provide for real-time access, and we will post a record of this meeting on the town's website as soon as possible. First order of business is to take a roll call from the Select Board. Mr. Nicastro?
Present.
Ms. Davis?
Present.
Mr. Shell?
Present.
Mr. Metters?
Present.
And the chair is present as well. Thank you very much. Next item of business is we have no minutes this evening, so we have public announcements and agenda item requests. Are there any public announcements this evening from anybody here and or on the Select Board anywhere? How about agenda item requests online or here?
Mr. Chair, I believe Police Chief Mike Anderson wants to make an announcement.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chief Anderson. Welcome. You're pretty busy with the announcements lately, there, Chief, huh?
What is a select board meeting without a public safety promotional announcement or a new position announcement? So let's keep the tradition continuing. Thank you, Jill. Thank you, members of the board. The promotion of Lou Malzone to Deputy Chief provided an internal promotional opportunity for the rank of sergeant in the department. With the completion of an internal two-day process and his official swearing in at 3 p.m. this afternoon, I'm proud to introduce to you all Sergeant Chris Vardakis. Chris is a 9-year veteran of the department. He was hired on March 18th, 2013. He served also roles in the fire department and the harbor master's office. During his career, he's become a very valuable member of the department. He's assumed the following roles. He's currently a certified field training officer. He's responsible for the training of new police officer recruits and transfers. He's the medical officer, being responsible for the department's medical supplies and equipment. He's a certified firearms instructor. He's a certified child passenger safety seat technician. And he's also police mountain bike certified, and he currently serves as the police union president. He's been the recipient of many departmental awards and recognitions, including a recent life-saving award. He's also currently in the process of completing the requirements for his bachelor's degree. He lives in Harwich with his wife, Nicole, who is a registered nurse at Cape Cod Hospital. He has 3 children, Elijah, Angela, and Owen. I believe that a police department is only as strong as its weakest sergeant, and I am fully confident that Chris will excel in this new position. I introduce to you Sergeant Chris Vardakis.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you
Welcome.
very much. Jill, I would like to thank you, and members of the board, I'd like to thank you as well. And certainly I owe thanks to the members of my department, Deputy Chief Malzone, Chief Anderson. It has been an honor serving the last 9, almost 10 years as a patrolman. I'm looking forward to continuing my leadership role in the department, and I thank you for the opportunity.
Super. Congratulations, Chris.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Good job. Who we got next week? Any other public announcements? Any announcements from the board? I think I already asked. I'm going to take we have some business, some board discussion items, a business agenda. We have public comments on business agenda items. We have a seasonal shellfish area openings, Renee. We have a request for a one-day wine and liquors. we have a consideration for an outdoor sale of goods and sales on town property, and then we're going to go to discussion of select board and goals and objectives for the years 2023 to 2024, work session. So, but I'd like to, if there are any comments here in the public, which there's nobody here, and I don't see any online, I would like to take one item out of order. I'd like to have the young man that's a representative of the Boy Scouts come forward. Mr. Jake Terrio is here, and present his request for the sale of goods at Kate Goulds Park. Welcome. You're a brave young man. Welcome.
Hi. Thank you, Select Board. Community service is a big part of Scouting. Today, I've come here to ask permission if we can set up in front of Cape Gould Park during the Christmas Stroll 2022 to sell our ornaments to benefit the Chatham Angel Fund. All of our proceeds will be donated to the Angel Fund, and we will be selling ornaments and other festive items. The Chatham Angel Fund supplies coats and other items to families who may not have them during this winter. I'd like to thank you for your time.
Well, thank you, Mr. Terrio. Any comments or questions? Ms. Davis?
I do want to just say that I serve on the board of the Angel Fund, just recently appointed, so I forgot that. I shouldn't say that way, but thank you very much for your dedication to community service. It's a really important piece of being a member of our town, and I really appreciate your time to do this.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Metters?
Good job, Jake. The Scouts do a great job, and I think it'll be a good benefit. Good evening. Wish you guys the best of luck. Please
Thank
have
you.
good weather that night. With all that being said, I'm going to make a motion, if you don't mind.
Please.
I move that the board grant a special permit for sale of goods on town property and the outdoor display / sale of goods in the downtown area to Chatham Scouts for the sale of 2022 Angel Fund ornaments and novelties on Friday, December 9th, 2022, from 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. on the sidewalk outside of Kate Gould Park.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? Just, I think it's a great effort. Got to be congratulated and good luck. Hope you raise a ton of money for the Angel Fund.
Thank
Okay,
you.
Mr. Nacastro.
Aye.
Ms. Davis.
I'm going to abstain.
Mr. Shell.
Aye, and I just want to say thank you very much. I think it's terrific that young folks like yourselves do what you're doing. It's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shell. Mr. Metters.
Aye.
And the chair says aye as well. Good luck. Raise a ton of money. Have fun.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jake. Good job. Okay, the next item on our agenda is the seasonal shellfish area openings, Mill Creek, Taylor's Pond, Champagne Creek, Oyster Pond, Muddy Creek, and Bucks Creek. And I believe we have our shellfish warden, Renee Gagne, present. Here she's online. Hi, Renee. How are you?
Good evening. Good evening to you and the Select Board. Yes, I'm before you this evening to seek your approval for the opening of our seasonal areas. And I believe you have all of the notices before you, and I'm sorry to say you will have to read them aloud.
And we have a ready volunteer, Mr. Shell, our clerk. Thank you, Renee. Mr. Shell, off to you.
We read them before we vote or after we vote?
Yeah.
Before we vote,
Yep,
okay,
yep, yep.
all right. Thanks, Renee.
Anytime.
Okay, so Shellfish Rules and Regulations, November 29, 2022, open, effective December 1, 2022. The waters and flats of Bucks Creek north of a line across the mouth of the creek and east of a line across the mouth of Cockle Cove Creek are open to the taking of shellfish by permit holders until further notice. Signed, the Select Board. Shellfish Rules and Regulations, November 29, 2022, open, effective December 1, 2022. The water, flats, and all tributaries of Champlain Creek northwest of a line drawn from the outermost piling at the town boat ramp northeasterly to the, quote, "no shellfishing," unquote, sign in the marsh on the opposite shore are open to the taking of shellfish by permit holders until further notice. Signed, the Select Board. Shellfish Rules and Regulations, November 29, 2022, open, effective December 1, 2022. The water and flats of Mill Creek north of a line drawn from the western breakwater to the eastern breakwater at the mouth of Mill Creek and south of a line drawn across the mouth of Taylor's Pond are open to the taking of shellfish by permit holders until further notice. Signed, the Select Board. Shellfish Rules and Regulations, November 29, 2022. Open, effective December 1, 2022. The waters and flats of Muddy Creek, southwest of a line drawn across the mouth of the creek, as defined at low tide, and northeast of the Route 28 bridge are open to the taking of shellfish by permit holders until further notice. Signed, the Select Board. Shellfish Rules and Regulations, November 29, 2022. Open, effective December 1, 2022. The Oyster Pond, east of a line from Kelly Landing to Long Point, is open to the taking of shellfish by permit holders until further notice. Signed, the Select Board. And finally, Shellfish Rules and Regulations, November 29, 2022. Open, effective December 1, 2022. The waters and flats of Taylor's Pond, north of a line drawn across the mouth of the pond, are open to the taking of shellfish by permit holders until further notice. Signed, the Select Board.
Thank you, Mr. Shell. Well done. Ms. Davis.
I'm going to make a motion I move to approve the opening of Mill Creek, Taylor's Pond, Champlain Creek, Oyster Pond, Muddy Creek, and Bucks Creek pending Mass Division of Marine Fisheries notification to the harvesting of shellfish effective December 1st, 2022.
Second.
Super. Discussion? Comments? Okay, Mr. Nacastro.
Aye.
Ms. Davis.
Aye.
Mr. Shell.
Aye.
Mr. Metters.
Aye.
And the chair says aye as well. Thank you, Renee. Thank you, Mr. Shell.
Thank you.
This
Mr.
is an
Chairman,
annual vote.
Mr.
Thank you.
Chairman,
Yes.
I assume, this is to Jill, really, the, Shauna will affix the signatures electronically, I assume?
Yes, she will.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next item on our agenda is the consideration of a request for a special one-day wine and malt beverages only permit for Pine Acres Realty. I know Lori Fanning Smith, I believe, submitted the application or the, let's see. This is, there's nothing untoward here, I don't believe, so.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
this looks to be in order. I don't see the applicant present, so I move to approve a special one-day alcohol permit for wine and malt beverages only for Lori Smith as a representative of Pine Acres Realty for indoor service only at 509 Main Street on Friday, December 9th, 2022, from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m.
Second.
Super. Discussion? Seeing and hearing none. Mr. Metters.
Aye.
Mr. Shell.
Aye.
Ms. Davis.
Aye.
Mr. Nacastro.
Aye.
And the chair says aye as well. Good luck, Pine Acres. Have fun. Okay. Next item on the agenda. We did the Boy Scouts. So the next item on the agenda is our Select Board goals and objectives, along with a discussion, a review of what we submitted as our goals and objectives, both Select Board goals and objectives and how they fell out and translated into goals and objectives for our town manager. And so I will turf it off to Jill to kind of introduce, and then we can go through the items that I think were summarized very nicely by Jill and Shauna in the package attached. So Jill, off to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So based on the source documents of your individual worksheets, Shauna was able to present them in the format that we currently have, which is the current year goals, and to let you see what may still be pending with your new items as well, and how to prioritize, and that's the direction we're looking for. And in turn, the town manager's objectives will be to carry out those goals that the board identifies. So a lot of what you will see is pretty much what you've seen before, the community priorities as well. But we wanted you to just take a look again at the categories of the goals, and then I believe on the last page you do have the value statements, if you want to take a look at those, just to make sure that they're consistent with where you're going as a select board. So a couple of things here: value statements, goal categories, a chart that we've used in the past, as well as a status, and your worksheets, and certainly open to simplifying everything if that's your preference. So I'll turn it back to you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, yes, Mr. Nacastro.
Mr. Chairman, just a couple of comments. On the value statements, we did have, when we discussed these, a public input to suggest a couple of additions, and I think they were well taken, and I wanted to suggest, so if you have the value statement page open.
It's the last page, yeah.
Yeah. Under E, which currently reads, "Protect the environmental quality of the town and the drinking water supply," I'd like to insert the words quality and between drinking water and supply. So it would read, "Protect the environmental quality of the town and the drinking water quality and supply." And then I would like to add item J, a new item, enhance public health and safety of the town. The other item, and I don't want to introduce controversy because I really don't want to get into the merits of this issue because we've had a split board on this issue in the past. And I know it was suggested by at least one member to be included, but when we've done the goals and objectives, my recollection each year is that we've agreed by consensus to what should go in and what should not go in, and then we take a vote at the end on the whole package. So with that in mind, I do want to point to page 2 of the matrix under social infrastructure, which has under the first category of affordable and attainable housing units, which I think we all support, there are some specific action items that are recited, including the 3 properties that we recently acquired. But the inclusion of 127 Old Harbor Road, I think, is something I would have an issue with. I mean, we could discuss the merits of it. I don't really think that's what I'm getting at. I'm just talking about process. I would assume at some point, I'm fully expecting at some point, somebody is going to bring this issue before this board, before the next town meeting, whether it's by petition or on the motion of a member of the board. But I know we've had in the past split votes, so I just throw that out. I respect the views of those who want to do something different with Old Harbor Road than the way I see it, but I just throw that out for the board's consideration.
Mr. Metters would like to weigh in.
No, I'll make a comment because it kind of ties into something I was going to bring up in the objective column of the inventory of affordable and attainable housing units. So I do agree that there was a mixed position on this board with 127 Old Harbor. So I guess I am in agreement that having it as a goal for the board, as an identified goal for the board, may not be appropriate. I'm fully recognizing it's going to be up for discussion, for sure. I recognize that. So I guess as having it as an identified goal, maybe may not be necessary because we are got some projects that we're working on. But what I was going to kind of throw into is one of the items that I put on my sheet. I don't think I spelled out clear enough that falls into this category that I want to throw up for discussion that may or may not have consensus too on the board. So if it doesn't have consensus, then it can get thrown out. So on the affordable attainable housing, on my actual sheet itself, on item number 2, I had a little note that said land swaps. And where I wanted to throw that conversation out there, and this is just a concept because I don't think anyone but the select board is probably going to bring this concept even forward for consideration, is clearly we're not going to make any more land in the town. If anything, we're going to lose land, with erosion. So we have X amount inventory out there. And we're looking for significant parcels throughout this town to balance affordable and attainable housing all throughout the community. So my question is, would the board consider looking at the inventory of town-owned land with conservation restrictions to consider if any parcel or parcels would be better meant for housing understanding there's a fairly lengthy process, understanding there's a 2-to-1 ratio to have to compensate for taking things out of conservation. And I know there's a lot of town land property that may be more beneficial in some eyes. Obviously, we got the Middle Road conversation. We got, Hamden Place, which is not exactly the best buildable place, but we only have so much inventory to work with and all our goals down the road for whatever we use it for. So is it worth seeing if there's an inventory of anything that could be identified that might be considered? There may not be. There may not be. But understanding if there's something that may better fit that goal and there's other land that we could swap it out as in a 2-to-1 ratio, I believe the ratio is 2-to-1 at least. Is that something the board would want to consider as part of this process? And that's what I wanted to be clear on my little sheet there, but I don't think it kind of translated into the matrix, the bigger sheet. Again, something that would need, more consensus to move forward, but I just want to clarify that position and throw it out there.
Okay, comments? Dean spoken, Michael, and then circle back.
I'm just going to confine myself to effectively to Dean's comment for the moment, and say this. This is the first time I've done this, so everything here is brand new. It's not as if this represents anything other than a consensus that I recognize was reached last year by this board X this seat. And so when I read it, there are a couple of things that leapt out at me right away. Well, wait a minute, what's this doing here? We haven't agreed to that. There's a lot of discussion that has to be had. Maybe it's something I could agree to, but right now I wouldn't agree to it as we sit here now. And then I stepped back and I said, well, wait a minute, this is, you need to read this as more on the nature of discussion topics. And so, once I came to that conclusion, it was a lot easier to read this and recognize that there are some items here that, and things that you're talking about having been the subject of a split board, that we'll have most likely a conversation, and it's important for us to have a conversation about, and so they belong on the list. And so I don't want to get into trading this one for that one or the other. I would just like to propose looking at the things that those of us that, see something that for one reason or another, you don't necessarily agree with as it came before the board and town meeting in the past, we would agree with now, and just treat them as items that are still on the town agenda and the board agenda, and leave it at that.
Thank you, Mr. Shell. I have a comment on 127 in particular, and the action item is issue RFPs and select development partners for Zero Meeting House, good with that. 1533 Zero Main, good with that. Stepping Stones Road, good with that. But I don't believe we can include 127 Old Harbor Road in that phraseology. But after a discussion, we should make an agenda item, and one of us certainly will, bring it forward as an agenda item. Then it could be a further discussion and then further action item. So I'm more than willing to delete it in this phrase here. I think it's appropriate because it's really a little different than those other three parcels. So I would have an agenda.
I'm going to dissent from that.
Okay.
I mean, we can be technical about it. I would argue that that's probably also true of stepping stones. Again, to me, this is the big picture. This is not laying out the details of, and there are a lot of things here that if you look at them with a magnifying glass, they're not technically perhaps quite the way they're actually going to come up. But I believe strongly 127 Stage Harbor Road belongs on the agenda as a potential for affordable housing.
Absolutely, and there's no disagreement there whatsoever. Mr. Nacastro.
Yeah, I'll several things. First of all, I neglected to. Thank you. I neglected to include or extend my comments to the comparable page on the town manager's goals and objectives, because that's there as well. I guess the concern I have about including it, and is broader than even what you suggested, Mr. Chairman, because this is this draft reflects the input that we all separately gave. Jill and Shauna took these, what we did without editing, because I did talk with Jill the other day, and included them for our consideration. But once this is adopted as the goals and objectives of the board, it governs what the town manager and the staff is supposed to do in the coming year. And that's, that's problematic for me on this particular item. It might be problematic on items that I inserted when we were all sort of blue skying as to what would go in this. So that's, I have a different view of the nature of the document than I think what Mr. Shell is articulating. And I understand, where he's coming from.
Ms. Davis?
I'm wondering if it would be better read to include, maybe not the specific of 127 Old Harbor Road, but to include in a matter of discussion, I'm not sure I agree with Corey on the conservation restriction piece yet, that we would be working towards looking at buildings and land, town-owned buildings and land for potential, and knowing, like I know internally that 127 is going to be one of the things that I want to support going forward, but it keeps it sort of in play in a way that maybe Dean would feel more comfortable with.
Mr. Metters?
I think having it at town-owned land and buildings is completely appropriate, because it does kind of tie into the thing with the land swap concept. We were looking at our inventory. It is finite, and not identifying one particular parcel or another, which has some mixed opinions about it, but having it as an overall, this is our inventory, what can we best do with it, whatever is located in town, is the appropriate way to handling it. So I'm in agreement with you on that one.
Thank you. Mr. Nacastro, then Mr. Shell, it looks like.
I would ask Board Member Davis if she would be agreeable to rephrasing it to read town-owned properties rather than town-owned buildings and land.
I don't see the difference. I mean, I don't see the motivation to change it. I think buildings and land sort of spells it out.
Okay. Thank you.
So what I think I just heard was that you'd like a future agenda item related to that very topic, okay? Which I think is totally appropriate. Mr. Shell?
So I'm not fine with that. I think we're straining at a gnat, but if you're going to treat 127 Old Harbor Road as Chatham-owned buildings and properties, then I think you have to treat stepping stones the same way.
Well, all three of them are Chatham-owned properties, all of them.
No, but
So why would you draw that distinction? They're all owned by Chatham at this point.
So
We
am I misapprehending that I guess what I'm saying is, I thought the proposal was to take 127 Old Harbor Road off and to add something to the effect of assessing Chatham-owned buildings and properties
Right.
for affordable housing.
Right.
And all I'm saying is you need to take stepping stones off as well for that reason.
I'm lost.
Okay, maybe it's,
Davis.
maybe, oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Ms. Davis.
Maybe it's, I just had a little whisper in my ear here, that it would read Meeting House, 1533 Main, Stepping Stone, and other buildings and land might.
What is the distinction you draw between 127 and stepping stones that keeps stepping stones identified and 127 not?
Go ahead, Corey, because
I think I'm following. Well, I could be off, or I'm going to throw this out there. So, where we have Meeting House Road and 1533, we have slightly more defined direction where we're heading with those parcels. Stepping Stone has been determined as surplus, but we don't really have a defined direction yet, so it's kind of a slightly different level, similar to 127, where there's really been no consensus yet. So the 127 and Stepping Stones are distinctly different than the previous two. Is that the read I'm getting a little bit, or maybe I'm off on that?
As I understand it, stepping stones for designation as housing, affordable housing, needs a town vote.
Right.
Okay.
At the moment, it's considered surplus by the school
Right,
committee.
right. 127 Old Harbor Road has had, if I'm not mistaken, no, I'm wrong. It was, the select board vote was against, it did not authorize.
Town meeting did not get quorum.
No, I know the town meeting voted against it.
3-2, Mike.
3-2.
Yep.
So the board voted in favor
Yes.
of stepping stones.
Yeah,
So the only issue, I say the only issue, the issue with stepping stones is asking town meeting again for similar authorization to that asked before.
just to support its being declared surplus by the, and accepting it as the acceptance. Go ahead.
I think, no, go ahead.
The difference that I see between these other three and 127 is that we have unanimity around this board on all of the other three for housing, even though there are steps that have to be taken with town meeting. Stepping stones is one that does not have unanimity. If you use the generic phrasing that Shireen is proposing, which would read, and other town-owned lands, buildings and land, that allows, that doesn't enshrine 127 as something that the town manager has to act on, but it does allow for this board, if a majority wants to pursue it, specifically with a future agenda item, which I'm sure the chairman is going to put on, to give that direction within the, under the umbrella of this generic language. That's.
And I'm just asking you if the test that you're proposing for anything on this list is unanimity of this board, because I don't think it exists with respect to many other items that are on this list.
Well,
We better go
there
through-
are some new items that have been inserted, and we can talk about those, but I would say that the ones that have been on there previously were on, we never took individual votes on them, but we massaged this list multiple times, and someone would suggest putting something in, and people would say, yeah, that's a good idea, or it's not. Mostly it went in. So there was, in essence, unanimity. And maybe we're not ready for it. Maybe people want to take a closer look at some of the newer additions.
Mr. Metters, and then.
Well, I was going to say, maybe we want to table this particular conversation to the other ones, because I know there's at least one other item on the agenda, on the list, that I have issues with, so I would be probably the minority, I'm guessing theoretically, so we would have unanimity in it, but I do recognize the topic will move forward and have a vote and whatever, so I guess maybe we want to move on to other areas and kind of flush that out.
This is what I suggest. I suggest we go through this list and cull out the ones we want to have a deeper discussion on, whether or not we make them in a future agenda item. That's what I think we ought to do. Otherwise, it's going to be a miasma. We're going to sit here twiddling our thumbs all
And a
night.
late night.
No, we will. No. So I really think we ought to go through the list and one by one, tick the ones you want to address in particular. You know, and I see two or three right off, I have two or three right off the get-go I want to address. But we do know we have consensus on many of these items, so I think we tick them consensus and then figure out which ones we want to discuss in depth, which would be, I would believe it's going to be 127 Old Harbor Road. It's going to be one of them. It just is. So anyway, I think we start on, are you guys okay with that? I think we get through it pretty quickly. I mean, otherwise, you know, we're going to be saying, okay, this is what we think, and when some of us maybe don't think this is what we think. So I think we need to get consensus on the items that we want to give Jill direction on. Mr.
I guess
Nakasky?
the only qualification to your proposed process is that we shouldn't necessarily say there's going to be an agenda item to things that are thrown off. That's up to an individual member.
Correct.
Otherwise, we're going to have a lot of agenda items.
Well, what I'm saying is that those items will not be considered as approved this evening. Or
Yes,
as direction
yes,
for our town
exactly.
manager, okay? For this evening, because many of them will be agenda items going forward. Okay?
Can I just
Go ahead.
get a clarification on the housing piece, though? Are we just, I mean, obviously, we want to move forward with what we've got going on with the housing stuff. So are we just going to take the 127 Old Harbor off for discussion? Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely.
Okay. So that Jill has direction to keep going on the
On
other
the
projects?
rest of it, and we'll do 127 very quickly, so it'll be back
Yep.
on.
Okay.
Okay. All right, let's start on page one.
Yep.
COVID impact ongoing. Nobody speaking up.
No, I mean, the three I want to just put on your list are the last three under financial.
Yeah, absolutely. Got it. Yep, they're all new. So I have a feeling it's the new ones that it's going to be. We good? We're good with that and financial, right? Okay. Clean, safe water, boy, if we don't agree on that, you know.
You're taking the last three out, is that on financial, is that what?
Yeah, yes, for further discussion, which is maintain town's historical, fair, and equitable tax structure. Further, we'll have further discussion on that. Support a short-term rental bylaw to annual town meeting if it's recommended, hasn't come here yet.
Well, actually, I'm sorry, I misspoke. The last of those three was my suggestion, and I'm fine with it. So I did not mean to take that off. I meant
Okay, and
to
that's
take the preceding two off.
Okay, so adopt an action and budgetary plan for implementing Chatham's ADA compliance report.
It's actually, I think the technical name for it is transition plan.
Yeah, I have no issue with that item either.
That's fine.
Okay, so it's just to maintain the town's historical, fair, and equitable tax structure and support a short-term rental bylaw to annual town meeting if recommended. Obviously, we wouldn't do anything with that unless it was recommended. Okay, next. Infrastructure, including drinking water, PFAS investigation, mitigation, and supply, clean, safe water to supply to meet the town's needs. We're good there, right? Advanced Center for Active Living project to conclusion. Is anybody not good with that one? Advance Eldridge Garage property project to a conclusion. Pursue stage approach to transfer station improvements.
Just a question?
Please.
I mean, this is identified as a priority. I don't have any problem with that. This is really the first time
Yeah.
I've heard a discussion of that.
And Mr. Meadows has got good background, as do we all.
There's a lot of
Go ahead, Mr.
background. It's one of the last municipal larger projects that we got to tackle. We've had some deficiencies and, you know, there's OSHA concerns and whatever. It's a dated building. And, you know, we're bringing in this whole conversation about diversity and equity and, you know, working conditions. And it is probably one of the less desirable break room conditions that we have. You know, it's long overdue to be addressed for a number of reasons, for the public and for staff.
And I might add to that, Mike, we've had some fairly detailed plans and programming there that we've looked at, implemented, you know, barely implemented anything thus far, but we had Tom Temple did a lot of work and the DPW department did a lot of work, and we've seen it 2 or 3 times here. Just fell off the wagon with COVID, et cetera, but we've done a lot of work.
So just, are we talking primarily about either staffing and what I'll call people issues, or facilities and what I'll call, building issues, or both?
There are both.
Okay.
And
Thank you.
it was staged kind of nicely, but yeah, both.
Quite expensive, too.
Yeah, very, it was costly, so we, hesitant. Assess quality use expansion replacement of the town's recreational facilities. This is a new item.
Yes.
Corey, you wanna speak to this one?
Well, this is one a conversation with the chair of the Park and Rec. I do know there's kind of been a recent inventory of like town facilities, kind of rating things. If my information is correct, kind of like rating how good the ball fields are, the tennis courts are, whatever. So I think we should look at the facilities that we have. See what kind of usage we have. Want to make sure they're up to par with any programs we have, with any of the youth programs, adult programs. It seems to be. What's that sport? Pickleball. It seems to be a mass desire to put about 25 courts out there. But basically, take a look at our inventory. Where area needs to be improved? What area is being used? It basically is an asset for the community, and make sure we have it up to par, both with usage and maintenance issues. Because I think there's some areas that may have had some maintenance issues over the years. So just kind of see where we are, and make sure those assets are handled the best of our ability for the community.
Can I ask a question about that,
Please,
Frank?
'cause I have a-
Wouldn't that be the role of the recreational committee commission to do that and bring a report back to us?
Yes.
They're going to work on that, yes.
Okay,
Yes.
But I want to have it queued up for us.
okay.
Yeah, I think we'd take a recommendation from Park and Rec.
Correct.
Let them do the work, yeah.
Okay, social infrastructure, we talked about the first item. Second item is finalize expansion makeup of the Housing Trust Fund Board of Trustees. No one has an issue with that. Promote protective zoning bylaw accommodations for multifamily housing where appropriate, dynamic zoning for year-round sustainability. That's a big one.
I assume that would be referred to the planning. I have no problem with it. I assume that would be referred. I keep forgetting. I assume that would be referred to the planning board. That would be the principal action item that we would take under it. I have no problem with it conceptually.
It's also very much a part of this entire, subject. So I'm with it too. I'm good with it. I'm good with it.
But
Okay, so we're not going to make that a separate,
can I just
please.
inquire here, with respect to the preceding one, finalize expansion makeup of Housing Trust Fund Board of, I take it that refers back to the legislation request that we've now put in twice.
Correct.
And the only thing I would, and this is maybe more of a, maybe it's an agenda item, maybe it's a Jill item, I'm not sure exactly, but the question, I get the question, and it's a question that occurs to me as well. Is there anything we could do ahead of time in the absence of hearing from the general court to change the governance of the trust fund?
Yeah, I think in the absence of that, it's held us up in doing that,
Well,
Yeah.
but I think it's worth a look to see if there's part of it that can be changed without that. I don't know what the answer is. It may be doubtful, but I think it's worth looking at. So what we do with that, maybe that goes under,
I would add a phrase including,
Yeah, including-
new models or
yeah,
new membership.
whatever, something that gets that on the table. Yeah,
I would add to that.
Okay.
Inclusive of, new approaches, new models, new membership.
or
Makeup.
staged effectuation. That's
Okay.
really what I'm talking
Okay.
about. Thank you.
That was a lawyer talking stage effectuation, by the way. Okay. Continuous issue.
Eat your heart out.
Yeah, it was a good phrase. Continuous issuance of RFP for acquisition of properties suitable for affordable attainable housing development. I don't think we're doing that anyway, all right? Onward and upward. Support efforts to maintain Chatham Elementary School, onward and upward. Attract academic research facility collaboration to town. This had some energy a couple of years ago, but
Yeah.
COVID really stopped it short. I have no interest in nuking it. It's still an interesting concept.
Yeah, yeah, it is, and I think that we can regenerate some interest.
Okay.
I believe.
Continuous outreach, and this is in our intergovernmental review, town staff and boards, continue outreach on status of Coast Guard Station Chatham, that's ongoing. Strengthen board policies and practices related to committees, we are doing that, and we're going to be periodically bringing some reorg back based on our discussion earlier about committees, back as agenda items. Staffing, we've moved this, I believe, down to actual goals and objectives for the town manager herself, so I think that's most appropriate. Thank you for picking that up, Jill. Under environmental and historic quality of town, work with neighboring towns on regional approaches and long-term strategies to address shark, seal safety, and enhance town as a safe seaside community. Hearing nothing, I'm going to move on. Long-term planning, strengthen coastal resiliency. We had a great report from the Energy and Action Committee. And oversee long-term plan for stage harbor. So I think we continue with those items. Legal, no action items. Community, intergovernment relations, ongoing, is our continuing to assess community needs through public forums and the Community Speaks platform. Return to in-person meetings in '22. We've done that. We're doing hybrid and in-person. Develop and implement to resolve community issues surrounding the airport runway protection zone, and that is a new item. Discussion there, Mr. Shell. Yeah, go ahead. Yep, 23.
My apologies.
No, it's okay.
2022 to 2023.
Got it. And then the next item, Mr. Shell, develop and implement plan to resolve community issues resounding airport runway protection. So we have an agenda item that's already been requested by Mr. Wilson, I believe that it's going to be coming forward, but we'll be addressing, I think we'll be addressing that, so I don't see any issue to take it off, if you will, as a separate item. Okay. We good there? Okay, financial. This is the town manager's action items. I'm on page 1 of the town manager's action items.
Mr. Chair, do you want to go back to the select board goals? And just to talk about the pending items, and then, because that's going to correlate here to the action items.
Okay. So where am I?
So there were. The
Oh, I'm
ones that were
sorry.
held, yes, exactly.
Ones that are held, okay. Tax structure? I assume Dean put this on the list?
You assume correctly.
Yeah. So,
And
yeah,
I'm happy to withdraw it. I mean, to me, it's susceptible of different interpretations as to what's equitable, and that point will be made, I'm sure, at some point in the future,
it will.
when a specific item is brought forward before. So I'm happy to withdraw it. To me, it's like mom and apple pie anyway, conceptually, but if it's a concern, we can take it off.
Okay, and then the short-term rental bylaw, that's going to come forward if it's recommended. And I do think that the recreational facilities should
Is
be.
that coming off, the rental bylaw one?
No, I leave it on in case they recommend it. I mean, if it's recommended, I guess it's kind of moot, isn't it? If they bring it forward, we're going to deal with it anyway.
I'll be honest with you, I think, and by the way, Dean, thank you. I appreciate where you're coming from, and we'll have that conversation.
Yeah, we will.
We will have that conversation. I feel exactly the same way about the short-term rental
Yeah, I'm
bylaw.
with you.
I mean, we're going to have the conversation, and to make it to make it an objective here, particularly under financial, I'm not even sure it really belongs there, but putting that to one side, it implies a predisposition on that subject that is, in my view, premature.
Okay, well, we haven't seen it yet. So, yeah, we will.
I'm okay with taking that off for the reasons Mike said. We've sent it to the working group.
Yeah,
Working group's going to come back. It's going to be in front of us.
That's fine, but the financial element, it'll probably need additional staffing, which is clearly, but completely fine with taking it off. We're having interesting discussions as it moves, so tune in to our meeting on Thursday.
No, I appreciate that, Corey, but it implies that the reason for doing it is financial. It will be expensive, or it will be costly, that I understand, but to me, that's not the reason you're doing it.
And should there be a regulation proposed or even a bylaw proposed, it'll come here, so we're going to deal with it anyway, so I'm good. And then we'll keep the action plan and budgetary plan for implementing the ADA compliance report. We keep that. It's under financial, page 1,
So I think you hit all the new ones.
except for the recreational.
Just to clarify, what's the resolution, and Shireen asked about, what's the resolution on the 127? Are we going with Shireen's language? Or
Yes.
Okay.
I'll, with a very, very strong statement that 127 Old Harbor Road is on my agenda and will be coming back, at least from me, I'll go with Shireen's proposal.
With me, too.
Me too, so
Yes,
there it
we
is.
know that.
There it is.
And,
Okay.
So the language is, and other
Another
town-owned,
buildings and land, she said, I believe.
okay.
Okay, is that it for the new items, Jill?
Yes, and then if you can just turn to your individual worksheets, just to make sure we captured everything on there, if you want to just take a quick review of that.
What's happening with the town managers?
We're going to go there right after this.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Please.
I know we kind of cite 127 led to a side conversation. Conservation, land swapping, I'm just looking to review the inventory. And nothing may be identified, maybe something may be identified. I'm just wondering, I guess, like, is there a piece of land that is under a restriction that would honestly make a better situation for housing? But in order to take that out of the restriction, we're gonna have to give up twice as much land somewhere else in town that might be more beneficial to the conservation components of it. I'm just looking to do an inventory, a review, seeing if anything is or is not identified, and it may not be, but just taking a snapshot look at what our inventory is. That's my ask.
So, Mr. Chair, so we have that inventory.
We do.
So and it's been probably maybe a year or two, so we can just bring it back to the board to
We
review.
reviewed that when I was chair, but that was under different circumstances.
Right.
that we were looking at it. I think we were looking for a specific piece of property for the senior center.
Yeah, so we have that. Our GIS department worked with planning and assessing.
But I'm just, I mean, the idea of surveying all town-owned property with a view to assessing its suitability for affordable housing strikes me as something that makes a lot of sense. I wouldn't get mixed up with conservation property or land swaps or anything else. I'd just look at the whole list and see what's there. I mean, even if it is a re-review, which I think is more or less what you're saying.
Well,
is it
I
not?
guess where I'm going with the land swap concept is there's, two examples. One, Middle Road. There's a lot of mixed feelings of how best to use that property. Housing, conservation, mixture, both. And then we have other areas that we looked at when we looked at the Council on Aging facility that, as an example, Hamden Place, really tough area to develop without, with topo issues and everything else. Maybe that belongs better as a conservation area where it's not buildable. But if we're going to tie that up with a restriction, maybe we can get another area somewhere else for a house or two. So I'm just saying, we have limited inventory. We're not making any more land, and how can we best use our assets and think kind of forward-thinking and look to the future about what we may or may not want to do with the land that we do have? And just kind of take a little bit broader look at, what our future plans are. That's just my philosophy, so.
Ms. Davis?
No, I think you're both talking the same thing.
Yeah.
I honestly do. It's an assessment of property.
And we actually have it in the file.
Yeah.
We have excellent assessments in the file,
So that'd be a great agenda.
with square feet and topos, and it's pretty good. Very
So you
detailed.
want it as an agenda item?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine with me.
Yep. Okay, I'm just looking through these.
It looks like
Jill,
we
yeah?
Yeah, it looks like we captured everything. I was just looking at each of your individual lists. Yep, still have coastal resiliency, so I think we have it.
Okay.
So the next step would then to be looking at the town manager's action items.
Yep.
Or objectives.
You want to lead the way, Jill?
Sure. I'm just looking to make sure it's consistent with what we talked about.
Yep.
Yeah, I was trying to think of ways, to take some of these items off, but, who wants to take off maintaining the town's AAA bond rating? So I think that's an annual ongoing. So what I did with this matrix is I listed the objective, the action items, the tasks that staff would do, the status, and then the last column I have, who is going to lead the effort with me. So I think if we look at the last item, draft short-term rental bylaw for ATM consideration, so I'll take that one off because it's actually, if you're looking forward, we're already in review through the working group of the short-term rental, and I agree, it shouldn't only be in the financial area, it could be quality of life as well. So I can take that off.
And you just want to conform at the top of, I guess it's page 2 of, well, page 2 in the middle, you want to conform the RFPs for properties. Middle.
The language.
Middle box at the top.
Yep.
The same thing.
Yes, yeah. All right, so definitely do that. So just infrastructure, including drinking water, I think we'll make the same changes for the goal category. And we will be looking for some direction, as you know, for the Council on Aging or Center for Active Living. The Eldridge Garage project is an update. It did get approved by the planning board, so it's moving through permitting, and we're hoping to go out for an RFP for that. So that was good news. So planning board approval last night.
Great.
What happened to paid parking? Is that on here anywhere?
Yes, it was on here.
Under financial,
Financial, yep.
we got
Under
it.
both, or just the town manager?
Town manager, Katie Donovan.
We had it on the,
Page 1 of 3 and the second block down.
Yeah, but Dean's asking about for our goals, right, Dean?
Yeah, I didn't see it there,
see
but
it
I
either.
I did want to, I know Corey may have some concern about it. Do you?
Well,
For the way it's
I mean,
worded?
in the spirit of the concept that we're going to bring forward a conversation to review and discuss and weigh in pros, cons, I'm not going to say don't bring it in. I have some reservations and some concerns, which will be brought up at the appropriate review. And if you want, we'll have the conversation, it'll be vetted, people give input, and we'll decide yay or nay. So,
Are you, suggesting that on page 1 under financial of the town managers, and the second item that we would delete that?
I'm not advocating for that. I will, express my concerns and, because without having the plan brought forward, I don't think it would be fair to criticize or throw concerns out without having a plan in front of me to review. So bring it forth, have it be processed. I'll weigh in on where my concerns are, let the public weigh in on where their concerns are, and then let it move forward or not forward accordingly. So I'm not looking to block it.
Okay.
I'm just looking to have express my concerns about it at the moment.
Okay. All right. Anything else under infrastructure, including drinking water? Good news on Elledge Garage, planning board, thank you.
Right, and just to note that one of the items, supply clean, safe water supply to meet the town's needs. That's something you turf to the Water and Sewer Advisory Committee that they're working on as a strategic and master plan in concert with our DPW department. So I had noted a little more specifics there than you saw in your goals. And I think that's it. Because that was a new one, advance the process for identifying and constructing possible new wells to supplement the town's water
Got it.
system.
Good.
That's part of the one.
Perfect. Perfect. We talked about social infrastructure and that one
Yep.
change to the language there.
Yep, we'll do that.
And intergovernmental review, town staff and boards, Jill.
Right, so there's a couple of new ones here. One of the suggestions would be dedicating the necessary and appropriate staff resources to achieve the select board goals and objectives, and evaluate periodically staffing recommendations to the select board, and also provide a who's who of current staff. So what we've been doing, as you might have seen in the staff reports, we're noting if it's a select board goal. So that calls it to your attention to know it was one of your priorities. So we can also, I'm working further with the team because so many of our boards and committees are doing a lot of good work. I'm working to try to balance the workload of staff. So that's, so having it in here is very appropriate, and it's on my top of list. And then understanding the who's who of current staff. We've had a lot of new employees where we used to bring staff to the select board meeting and you'd have an in-person interaction with them. We've been, except for public safety recently, we've been putting more of the new hires in our main sheet. So I know that doesn't really give them, a connection to you as a board and vice versa. So certainly work on that. So that's something that I've designated for the HR administrator, Megan, to fulfill. Working to fill the positions, department heads, and community-sensitive professionals. I think that's completely appropriate, and that's also the work of Megan. And we're looking at the next item, succession plan for the Office of the Town Manager and each direct report. That's been something that has been on our radar, but we're going to, with Megan's, with her here, and it has some longevity and exposure, that's something that we'll definitely work to begin just to identify with the department heads, and also working to document or scan some of, the various reports that we have, and just the capacity of some of our longer legacy employees trying to tap into their intellectual knowledge, especially the historical knowledge. So that's something that we're working on and try to do a little creatively as well. So everything that's been in here about staffing and workload, it's something we've discussed, and I'm happy to make that a priority. And then another item that we're working on is to evaluate staff morale on Team Chatham and identify areas to improve and address concerns. So Leah, Shauna, and Megan are working on a pretty cool thing for me to do. We're calling it Food for Thought. And we haven't rolled it out yet, but it's so that I can meet with groups of employees who may not know each other and just have a conversation. What do you think we're doing well? What should we do? What are your concerns? Not getting into, full-fledged complaints, but having just a dialogue of what we can do and what they think our culture is like. So more to come on that. We're really excited, and it will give every employee an opportunity to meet with me directly. And then I'll resume my in-person biweekly meetings where I get to meet with the various department heads and staff. So it's something that I saw as an identified goal for myself. So more on that. We haven't rolled it out yet, but we're working on it. So that will take place in January. Looking at the communications of town project and reports to the select board and public, optimize internal and external communications. I think that will be further optimized once we get our administrative assistant for the select board and the town manager's office to pull Shauna away from some of those duties, including minutes, and have her focus 100% on communications. And she does a really great job, and I know she's very creative and looking forward to partnering with the Channel 18 staff to do even more. And I think that the only thing on here that has been but was on hold is looking at a storage and facility plan, and that's a priority for us this year. We found that there's, especially with looking at the new fisherman storage area, the old fisherman storage area has been cleaned up and it looks really great, but the new one just got us thinking about where the harbor master has items stored and shellfish and how to make it easier for them to access everything. So there's a lot of stuff dispersed, including documents too. Looking for the adequate storage of a lot of files that we're retaining. Some we don't have to, but we do. Some because we get a lot of public records requests, a lot of the airport files. So we're looking to consolidate those to make it easier and also digitize them as well. So I'd still like to see this on here. And the last one is a new one, is complete and present a report on town-owned property and spaces used by the departments. I'm not sure if that was.
That was on my goals.
Was that, yeah, if you could elaborate on that, that would be helpful too.
Jill, I think it ties into what you were just saying previously about, we have a multitude of like different areas where different staff or departments are using different areas around town, and maybe there's a more efficient way to be able to consolidate, clean up, and assess where everybody has different areas and be a little more designated.
Okay, great.
And the other piece to that is there any, surplus at the end of that? That could be used for some other reason.
Okay. Then, last page, 3 of 3, looking at environmental and historic quality of the town, looking to work with neighboring towns on regional approaches and long-term strategies. There hasn't been since we had the grant for the shark education, we haven't resumed the regional meetings at the town manager level. I know the shark working group is still working together, and I know it's more than shark, it's seal safety, but that's pretty much been on hold. So I think that will resume just because of COVID. I think that will resume probably this winter, especially with some of the water-related activities they're not as busy in the winter time. So I think that will give us time to get staff reacquainted with our regional partners on that. And same with coastal resiliency, our long-term plan for and waterfront infrastructure plan. This is something that you've identified as a priority, especially with the waterfront bond article and coming back to the Energy and Climate Action Committee activities. We also have a town landing master plan and other planning documents that we're looking to take off the shelf just to make sure that we're working through them, or if they need updates or if they're out of date. So that's something still on our plate. And that I have assigned to Ted Keon, but also to Dr. Bob.
Just a question which really goes back to the Select Board, but Jeff, you had on your list waterfront reinvestment, which I thought was coastal resiliency and related issues, but I just want to kind of confirm that in my mind.
It's really both, but we had the $11 million, bond offering that was dedicated to our waterfront infrastructure. I'm concerned that, our list of asks was more than the amount of money. So I wanted to revisit the projects. Are they still viable? I assume they are. And then how much more money are we going to need in order to make those improvements? And what is this huge nut to protect our marshes and our shoreline, et cetera? And what do we have there? We'll know more after we see Ted's presentation on the 8th. But it's a lot of, it could be a lot of stuff. But I was really focused on revisiting our waterfront investment plan that we had that I think is going to run out of money.
Thank you.
Mr. Meadows.
Just a little tidbit on the infrastructure, even though we can't really plan for these things, we've been very beneficial for some of these Seaport grants. So we've received significant funding that we weren't planning for, that has been beneficial to stretching that $11.3 million.
Have we ever done a great job? Yep. Okay, thank you.
So looking under communications and intergovernmental relations, I know we've had fallen behind with some of the monthly reports. So we want to resume the quarterly reports that we had talked about for the various projects. And so dedicating an agenda item or providing a written report and an agenda item for board and public discussion, we do need to resume that, and that's one of my priorities. And then we had talked last year about having a public forum before the start of the projects, and we haven't really had new projects per se, but certainly looking at, revisiting the transfer station project, and that would, we've had some abutter groups. That was something that Tom had done a couple years ago. We do need to bring in the town staff to hear those who are at the transfer station working what they feel is best for the system there, and we'll work to do some public forums as well. So it's not just COVID, it's just some other priorities unplanned that came up that we need to revisit this and get back on with our public information campaign. And then the last item is a facilitated meeting regarding the airport and the one runway protection zone, that's the RPZ. That was a new item, and I've assigned it to Terry to assist, but we probably should have some more discussion on that, maybe an agenda item just for planning purposes, and then we can organize it pretty quickly after that.
Mr. Shell.
Yeah, just, if I go back to the Select Board objective is develop and implement plan to resolve community issues surrounding airport runway protection zone. And this is a lot more specific. It sort of dictates what you're going to do in a very specific way, and I just wonder whether it wouldn't be better to have those a little bit more in conformity. I think there will be, I'm sure there will be a meeting relatively shortly, but I might think about trying to conform those a little bit. I'll throw that out as a discussion question for the group.
I don't have an issue with that.
No, I don't either. I don't either.
So do you want me to refer to it, upon direction by the select board versus?
I think support or collaborate with the select board in the development of plans to resolve, and then just pick that up.
Okay.
Good. It's not a stage effectuation, is it? Oh, that's gonna have a life. Now, quixotic, there you go. Could be. What's your desire? Do you want to have this re-summarized and reissued, or do you want to take a vote on what we discussed this evening? Because I think they got a pretty good handle on.
I think we've got it. I would suggest we vote tonight
Okay.
on it,
All right.
if people want to.
Okay.
So I'll offer the motion that the board approve the goals and objectives as revised this evening, as well as the value statements as revised for both the select board and the town manager.
I should have asked this a long time ago, Dean, but I think on health and safety, your word was enhance. Well, no, I just remember the suggestion that may have prompted it, or that you were in collaboration, whatever, and the word, I think, was protect.
Yeah, it was.
And I, in
Well,
some ways, I think that's.
We'll change that to protect.
Yeah.
Well, we have other phrases, not to belabor this, but we have protect and enhance, blah, blah, blah.
That's fine, too.
Okay, so I think that's
Protect,
most,
so protect and enhance.
yeah, public safety, public health and safety.
So with that,
Yes, with that. Okay, thank you so much. And a second, please.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Shell. Mr. Metters.
Aye.
Mr. Shell.
Aye.
Ms. Davis.
Aye.
Mr. Nacastro.
Aye.
And the chair says aye as well. Thank you very much. Thank you, Jill.
Thank you.
Yep. And I do believe we have an executive session as well this evening, and I will turf it over to Mr. Nacastro, where I typically look for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board go into executive session under Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 21, Number 2, to conduct collective bargaining sessions or contract negotiations with non-union personnel, parenthesis, town manager, close parenthesis, with no return to open session.
And a second, please.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Davis. Mr. Nacastro.
Aye.
Ms. Davis.
Aye.
Mr. Shell.
Aye.
And Mr. Metters.
Aye.
And the chair says aye as well. Thank you very much, and good night, Chatham.